I didn't even know what to exactly do, so I was hoping for your ideas, what you are interested in. I've been modeling AFV models for like, I don't know, 10 years maybe, and learned some stuff along the way, but today is more about showing you stuff and encouraging you to try it on your own. So what we're going to do, one of the most important things in my eyes, paint chipping. Paint chipping makes or breaks a model. If it's really fine, you can gain a lot. If it's too much, you can really ruin it. And I'm going to show two techniques, the hairspray technique and the more traditional technique with the brush, which is very time consuming. But ever since Mike Rinaldi keeps publishing stuff, the chipping with the hairspray technique is very popular and very effective. The problem is the application and the colors you actually use. Has either of you ever worked with a hairbrush technique? You did? Habt ihr mit der Haarspray-Technik schon mal was gemacht? Yeah? Okay, what kind of colors do you normally use? You didn't work? Okay, okay. Haarspray, wenn ihr Haarspray-Technik macht, was für eine Farbe? Okay, und welche Farbe mit welchem Medium? Ist es Tamia, ist es Live Color, ist es...
AK habe ich jetzt auch.
Ah, okay.
Ich habe auch schon normales Haarspray genommen und normale Vallejo-Farbe auch.
Ja.
Also wie gesagt,
exactly. The biggest problem is what colors do you use and what medium do you use? There are many chipping fluids. Basically, it's hairspray all the time, just without the perfume. But you also want to, just find a brand you're comfortable with. More important is the color you use. For example, if you have the AK stuff, the chipping fluid, these work very fine, but only for one day. Die funktioniert wirklich nur am ersten Tag. If you apply the hairspray and shortly after this color, it's very easy to remove and it's almost impossible to remove too much. But if, for example, you're using Tamia paints with lacquer thinner, the one with the yellow cap, which is very popular, it's almost impossible to get it off. So the combination of paints is the most important thing. It just doesn't work with every color. So you need to really try it either on an old model or just try to stick to the different brands. So if you use AK or MIG, you might want to use the colors, but don't wait too long. If you use Tamia paint, you can, even weeks after, you can still remove it. With this, not so much. I applied the base coat on Friday night, and today, and also applied the dark yellow. And today, it's impossible to remove it. You can't really remove the paint anymore. If you you can really put a lot of water on it and do whatever you want, but it won't go off. It's impossible. But I did it yesterday and the night before, and you get really fine chips. But I did this right after the application of the color. Also je länger ihr wartet mit diesen Farben, desto schwieriger wird es, die Farbe runterzukriegen. Wenn ihr Tamia hernehmt, ohne Lacquer Thinner, geht's ewig. Mit Wasser, Tamia mit Wasser verdünnt, geht auch ewig. Aber mit Lacquer Thinner zum Beispiel kriegst du es kaum runter. So it really depends on the colors you use. Mike Rinaldi always uses colors thinned with water. And this is going to work. But if you apply too much, you accidentally remove too much paint. So this is not very pretty either. So it's really a matter of training. But what really works is the same with the colors from MIG. MIG and AK is pretty much the same. So this is what I've done. The first thing you do, das erste, was ihr macht, auf jeden Fall ist eine Grundierung auftragen. Jetzt gibt es viele farbige Grundierungen. Nowadays we have many colored primers, like this one. This is basically the red primer color, which is very good as a base coat because you can prime the model and also you have a base coat to create the chipping. So if you start with a red red color as a primer or even dark brown, you can achieve the chippings very easy, and it's also in the right color. So you have the light scratches, you know, with the red primer showing through. So this is very realistic. And if you want deeper scratches, you can still, you know, add the brown colors at the later point. But still, this is still a very good way to start if you use the right color of the priming coat. Priming is very essential per se, no matter what you do with your models, no matter what style you like to apply. Priming is it's very important because if you don't do it, your pieces may fall off when you use the white spirit. It always protects the plastic. Some companies, new companies for example, the plastic is not that great. So if you apply the washes and the plastic is not so good, your pieces will start to crack or details will fall off. Manchmal ist es echt wichtig zu grundieren, weil euch sonst die Teile abfallen, wenn ihr mit White Spirit arbeitet. Bei den neuen Firmen, wo jetzt aus China kommen, manchmal ist das Plastik dermaßen schlecht, dass wenn du mit White Spirit arbeitest, gerade Spalte entstehen oder einfach Teile runterfallen. Darum ist eine Grundierung heutzutage eigentlich fast immer essentiell. Do you guys prime your models? Prime? What kind of primer do you use? Good one? Yes. There are different type of primers, but this is resin based, like that's a Vallejo, the same as Vallejo. Ich behaupte, es ist dasselbe. Und zwar, also ich kenne Alex Vallejo von den Farben Vallejo und Fernando Vallejo und keiner hat mir jetzt Gegenteiliges gesagt. Ich gehe davon aus, dass es dieselben Eigenschaften sind und eigentlich rein theoretisch auch dieselbe Firma. Ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass 3 Firmen innerhalb von Spanien ähnliche Produkte machen und es ist nicht dieselbe Fabrik. I strongly assume that those primers, Vallejo, MIG, AK, it's supposed to be the very same color with the same properties. Good thing about these is they dry very fast, very fast. Die tun natürlich sehr schnell trocknen, das heißt, du kannst direkt wieder... No, really not. I'm very impatient actually, so I hate to wait. Ich bin total ungeduldig. Und warten gibt es bei mir nicht. Entweder ich tue basteln oder nicht.
Also keine Negativerfahrung?
Nein, nein.
Ich könnte auch darauf direkt Tamia.
Ja, unbedingt. Ja. Well, like I said, now with the colored primers, it's very good because you can actually save one shade of color. If not, if you use a gray primer, most of them are just like a bright gray color. That's fine as well. After applying the primer, you're going to see some areas which maybe need some cleanup, you know. But most important is that the Tamia paints, for the most part, are able to adhere very well. So, yeah. So today we are going to, just for the hell of it, we are going to use this color because the reason is I like the shade. It's a very nice tone for Dunkelgelb to start with. I'm mostly building German armor, so it's all about Dunkelgelb. So yeah. This is actually, in comparison to the real Dunkelgelb, it's a bit too bright, but it's going to darken when we apply the filters and the washings. So this is a good start. And well, I just like the shade, and I painted quite a lot of models of it. Also, you can just take it straight from the bottle. The properties of these are very well. You might want to add like a little bit of thinner, but you not necessarily have to. Another paint which is perfect for airbrushing, of course, is Tamia Paint. Probably still the best paint. If you use Tamia paints, just make sure you use the right thinner. You can thin it with alcohol and water, of course, but the best thinner is the Laker thinner with the yellow cap. Also den kennt ihr auch. Oder die. Genau, sehr gut, genau. So I hope it still works. At home, Friday night, I applied a primer and I also applied a coat of AK chipping fluid. So I hope it's still there because I don't have any here. So let's just see.
My problem was when I difficult to the actual paints after the chipping.
So when you apply the base coat, one problem about these paints, as well as Vallejo paint or MIG, the needle, the nozzle is prone to clog sometimes. This is because there's resin in this color, and that's a part which makes sure that it's a very strong surface. But this also makes the airbrush clog at times. To avoid this, you can add a drop of this or even this. You can use them and you can use them together with these. So du kannst die Vallejo-Produkte ja auch gemeinsam mit denen benutzen, was auch ein Indiz wäre, dass es sich um die gleiche Farbe handelt. Ja, vielleicht ist die Mischung anders, aber der Verzöger, der Trocknungsverzögerer passt mit denen auch super. So if you use these, your needle won't clog that fast. Maybe if you're lucky, it doesn't clog at all. I hate it. It makes me really mad because if you're working and then it starts clogging, you have to clean the whole airbrush.
Der verhindert, dass die Farbe so schnell anzieht vorne auf der Nadel.
Genau, genau. Das kannst du dadurch dann sparen. Ja. Aber nur die blauen. Aber ein bisschen Verdünnung kann nicht schaden, aber normalerweise nicht.
Ich habe jetzt einmal mit weil da schnell trocken war, da kannst du das sofort weitermachen. Da tun wir erst aber wie gesagt, da musst du 2-3 Mal die Nadel sauber machen, dass du davon nicht weitermachen.
Okay, now I apply the base coat and let's just see. Okay, it works, thank God. So base coat applied, tap water, just another brush. In this case, it's a rather soft brush. You don't want to really, go all the way. So, and then you focus on exposed edges, like here. I'm going to turn it around soon. And just with a circular motion, you just kind of, work on that surface there. So you create the effect that on this very edge, the paint is worn off. It's very subtle. I don't want to, I try to make it more obvious. Again, when it's about chipping, it's Mike Rinaldi said there's never a chip too small, too big always, but if it's too small, it's the more realistic it actually is. If you want to know if your chipping is okay, just put your model on a table and step back 2 meters and look at it. You shouldn't be able to see the chipping from 2 meters. If you get closer, of course you see it, but if that's a rule of thumb. So if you can see it from away, it's very realistic. For the most part, if it's not a wreck, it should be very, very small. So now we created, the effect of worn off paint, and it's not that it comes off all the way. So yeah, and you can keep on working on this area now. When you have holes in the surface and you apply water, the water will creep into the holes, and it's easier to remove it. So if it's really hard to remove, you just want to soak the surface for a bit, and then you wait a while, and then you can keep on working on it. So it's rather easy to remove it, even though maybe the effect would be more obvious if I would have applied the hairspray or whatever you use right now. It's more obvious, but I was hoping I had some here, but I didn't, wasn't able to get some. But you get the idea of the paint chipping, So this is what you get with a soft brush, but you can also do it a hard way if you want to, create scratches. You just need something, a blunt object, something sharp, and then you just go. And you can create the scratches with a blunt object. First one was a bit too much pressure. You really need to find the balance here. In this case, I removed the entire paint, which is not very pretty. But well, you still can fix it. But if you have something like a needle and you scratch into the surface, it's finer than everything else you could achieve with a brush. For example, this guy right here, that little scratch there on the fender, it's created just with and it's a very fine scratch, a very realistic scratch because it is a scratch. It's not simply painted on; it's a real scratch. So the effect is very realistic. On the side, the same. So it's a very nice technique, but it's a bit difficult to control. You need experience with it, and many people, even including myself, ruined models with it because the lack of experience. And because of the paints didn't work together very well. I also have to say that I probably strip every other model, maybe almost every model. I always have one try, I don't like it, and I start over again. Remove the entire paint and I start over again. This happens to me all the time. So it's all about trying and failure. Ich habe gerade erzählt, dass ich so ziemlich bei jedem zweiten Modell irgendwie alles nochmal abnehme und von vorne anfange. Es kommt bei mir andauernd vor, aber wenn ich kein gutes Gefühl habe, mache ich es halt nochmal. Wichtig ist, dass man beim zweiten Mal was anderes macht als beim ersten Mal. Aber ich bin mir da nie zu schade und also das klappt bei mir meistens auch nicht gleich auf Anhieb. It's not that, it's all about experience, trial and error, just do it again. Personally, I don't, I just don't see any sense to work on with it if you're not satisfied with a certain effect. You may be able to hide it somehow, but I feel more comfortable if you just start over. But it's a personal thing. I don't have to. If you want to apply a camouflage, you start just like this. You start like this to the chipping with the red priming, and then you apply hairspray. And then you apply the camouflage. So the camouflage is worn off as well. That's one way to do it. Mike Rinaldi applies all the paint, hairspray, paint, hairspray, paint, hairspray. And then he starts working with the water, which works very well because he's using Tamia paints with water. In this case, it really works. You can work your way all the way through to the base coat. But again, it's the combination of colors. In this case, I would do it. Nicht so gut, nein.
Und mit dem Acrylverdünner auch? Oder?
Mit dem Acrylverdünner besser und mit Wasser am besten.
Aber ich sehe, beim Wasser dürfte die doch gar nicht so fein werden. Oder ist das egal?
Also ich finde auch, das ist das Problem dabei. Also ich wundere mich wie der das macht. Well, again, you need to find out the properties. I also think that the environment plays a role, your airbrush plays a role, pressure, weather. I mean, in the summertime, my airbrush has a different performance than now. I mean, if you have 30 degrees in your workshop, it almost dries on the way. That's how you get overspray when you're applying the paint and it's almost dry when it hits the model. When the distance is too far, it's really easy to create overspray, like a rough surface. So you should go closer and maybe reduce the pressure to have a good, even surface. Okay. Another thing we are going to try is the classic way, which is really horrible when you do it during a demo because you're always a bit nervous and you kind of need a calm hand for it. If you look at this guy, you can just, the chipping on here is used with only with a brush, so the classic way. Of course, you can also achieve, you know, kind of nice effects, but it's very time consuming. Ja. Auch, ja. If you choose to do the paint chipping by brush, which is still the most probably the best technique because you have the most control, but it's very time consuming. It's important what kind of paint you use. If you want to create chips showing the red primer, I would strongly recommend Life Color. It's from the Rust and Dust set. It's a dark rust, I think. And it resembles the color which is red primer. So it's a very nice color to use. And it's always very nice to, you thin it with water. And you need to, you know, find the right consistency. You want to thin it until you have a consistency like milk. To make sure it won't dry that fast, you can apply this. Because if you don't do that, whoa, in a war environment, it will dry on the brush, so you can't really paint with it. This is a retarder medium. If you add this to any kind of acrylic paint, it will reduce the drying time, and also it will improve the performance on the brush. I bought some new brushes, especially for this occasion, because if you guys would see the brushes I normally work with, you would think I'm crazy, because my brushes are usually not in a very good shape. Also meine Pinsel daheim, die können es eigentlich wegschmeißen. Ich musste extra neue kaufen, dass es nicht ganz so peinlich wird hier. Yeah, I don't really, you know. So you need to really mix it very well, so the retarder blends in very well. For doing this, it's always good to have something like a tile or this. You can work with any kind of colors, and you just, you know, can rework it. So. Okay. Let's see. So what we do is, okay, we need a good brush. Normally I use the 10-0 brushes, 10-0 Pinsel, but it really depends. If you have a fine-pointed brush, ein Pinsel, der vorne spitz zuläuft, ist es egal, wie dünn der ist, sondern du kannst mit der Spitze letztendlich dann die Sachen aufmalen. Am wichtigsten ist der Winkel. If you paint by a brush, the angle is very important. If you try to do it like, you know, it's very hard. So you need to have a good, solid position of your hand, but also you need to have a good position of your model. And depending on the angle, normally 90-Grad-Winkel, also wenn ihr einen Pinsel im 90-Grad-Winkel auf das Modell halten könnt, dann habt ihr die besten Effekte, die scharfsten Lackerplatzer. This is not 90 degrees, but much better than, you know, depending on what you have at home, but you might want to just reuse it. So what you do is you just try to paint it on in a random manner. You know, just don't. There's nothing worse than paint chips when in regular manner. It needs to be very random and also focused on areas which are used very often. So on the fenders, for example, or around the hedges. And it's very time consuming. If you want to do it, you know, on a fine scale. There are people who are using magnifier glasses for it, but I feel dizzy if I use magnifier glasses. I think it's weird. In this case, it's maybe even good that you don't have a steady hand, so the brush is kind of jumping. You know, muss man gar nicht so ruhige Hände haben, weil wenn die Hand so ein bisschen unregelmäßig auf der Oberfläche hopft, dann hast du ganz nette Effekte. Ja, ja. So, genau. This is the area I just worked. It's a really small area, but I try to make it as small as possible. The scratch, for example, is way too big. It's not what I'm really looking for. Good news is, with using the retarder, I can easily remove the paint scratches. So if you apply paint chipping and you're not happy about the result, and you use the retarder, you can rework it with you just remove it with a damp brush. See, it's almost gone. So it's a good way to use it. And if you're not, you know, if you don't feel all that convenient about it, it's maybe best to remove it. But you just need to find the right balance with the brush, with the water, with the paint. Again, this is something you need to practice and, you know, try it on an older model maybe. If you apply scratches, try to make them rather long. If you observe models in the competition, they all have scratches and paint chipping, but they all have the same length. So you might want to use longer scratches and also round. Like, for example, if a vehicle is driving against a branch, also wenn ein Fahrzeug gegen einen Ast fährt, dann bleibt dieser Ast ja nicht praktisch auf derselben Höhe und macht einen ganz geraden Kratzer, sondern den drückt es zur Seite, sodass der Kratzer dann irgendwie so nach unten oder nach oben geht. Und so, das sollte man mal probieren. Das sieht deutlich realistischer aus. Best thing is to also use a darker color for the really deep scratches, which could be, for example, the classic is 822 from Vallejo. This is the most popular paint for scratches or paint chips. Also die wird echt am meisten hergenommen für sowas. Genau. I always have those tiny balls at home, so if I buy a new paint, I just put them inside because it's a pain, you know, they don't shake very well. Bei Mix sind ja jetzt solche Kügelchen drin. Hier, ich habe immer separat welche daheim und tue die dann rein, wenn ich es kaufe. Well, this is the Vallejo paint, another good paint, burnt umber from AK again. But you know, we're just looking for some dark brown shade, which is, you know, around this. This is pretty much how plain metal would look if you peel off the paint before it starts to rust, of course. Oh yeah, I did some Oh, okay. This is some hairspray chipping I did on the road wheels, which is also a very nice effect. Hast du die Brille wieder nicht dabei, gell?
Ich kann ja erführen. Ich habe so feine Finger.
Ja, sehr gut. Nein, keine Pigmente. Keine Pigmente drin, ne. Ich habe mal eine Demo in Oberschleißheim gemacht, in München. Und da war ich so besoffen, am Vorabend, dass jemand anderes mir die Farbe immer in die Airbrush reinfüllen musste. So if you apply darker chips, you are going to focus on the areas you worked on first. You're just going to work into these areas you worked before with the red primer. This is pretty much all about the paint chipping. Another technique, of course, the sponge technique. This came real popular. Personally, I don't like it so much because it's hard to control, I think, and it's easily overdone. But modelers like Mick, he uses that very much. So what you do, again, you start with a brown color, and you have some sort of foam, you know. Ich warte darauf, dass das irgendwann mal verkauft wird als irgendwie so Chipping Sponge. So you dab it into the paint, and so the thing is, you just need to make sure that there's not too much paint on the brush. So you dab it on a piece of paper, and you see if we would apply this on the model, it would be horrible, you know. So you just gotta. We dab it onto a piece of paper until it's almost gone, and then we just start working on the model. Then you focus on the exposed edges. I just overdo it a little for, yeah, that's the effect you can create. So yeah, well, it's not so bad, but it's very, it's very heavy chipping, of course, but you can combine both techniques and it looks okay, you know. So this is very popular. Personally, I think it's just hard to control. Sometimes it looks very good. Sometimes, it's a little bit too much. So you need to find a right balance to do it. Yeah. Yeah. If you happen to use the glaze medium or the retarder medium and you're not pleased with the effect, you can again remove it. I didn't put it in here, so I can't really show you, but it's just if you use that, you have about 10 minutes. 10 Minuten hast du auf jeden Fall Zeit, es wirklich gut zu entfernen. If you want to do it all the way, and if you want to do the paint chipping with a three-dimensional effect, of course you can add highlights to the lower areas of the paint chip, so to speak, so it gets a kind of volume to it. Yes, of course you can do that. That's how I did it here in areas. Of course, when you do that, it looks very, very nice, but it's very time consuming, and you can't do it with a brush because it's hard to hit the right spot, so you only have the choice with the brush, and you do that. But Okay, one of the most important things about a tank are the tracks. They're very prominent, and if you don't finish the tracks in a very pleasant way, it's not very good. For example, the tracks on this guy, they're very prominent, and they actually add the whole character of a tank. Basically, a tank, it's all about tracks. So it's really important on how you finish them, I think. On this guy, you don't even see the tracks so much, but still, you also have the spare tracks sometimes as an extra armor. And with tracks, it's all about color variation. A friend of mine, he's very crazy about the Panther, and he has a homepage about the Panther. And he bought a track link from a Panther. And he bought it and he got it sent, and it was really dirty. So we had it cleaned with that Sandstrahl. So it was perfectly cleaned, and they sent it back to him, and it was perfectly green in like a gray shade. And 2 days later, all rust, perfectly rust. The entire track was full of rust. So. If you use spare tracks on your tank and they're not painted, it's very likely that these guys are rusty in any way. So, and most of them, to make it more interesting, you kind of do a variation, use this and use that, just like on this guy, I used on every single track link a different filter in another rust tone, just to create a variation. You can still see it that I use different colors on these guys. Just a filter, a slight filter, like even like this. I even could apply like this now. It's a reddish color, and I could still apply it on a single track link just for the hell of it. Well, not this. But if you have a reddish filter, you can just apply it to a single track link. You won't see it, it kind of looks harsh now, but it will dry, and then you don't even notice it. But it will create a subtle contrast. So kriegt ihr halt abwechslungsreiche Ketten hin. Ja. Und wie gesagt, die Dinger rosten immer. Also wir haben das mit dieser Panther-Kette ausprobiert, sandgestrahlt. Die haben das zurückgeschickt. Scheißding war sehr, sehr schwer übrigens. Will man gar nicht glauben. Und sofort Rost. So if we are applying spare tracks, rust is the only way to go. If you apply the general tracks, of course we need more earth tones. Everybody uses frioles these days. Do you use frioles? Yes. Do you use the metal tracks? Not yet. Okay. These are very popular. Because they have their own weight, they're very heavy. If you Yeah, genau. They have their own weight to it, and they kind of sag between the return rollers, which looks very realistic. Yeah, they have their own weight.
Do you build those from different parts?
Yeah. Yes, you just pin them together. It's a bit time consuming, but you pin them together, and there's a piece of thread in between each link, so you really put it together. I had a girlfriend who did it for me, but the one I have now, she doesn't do it. But the other one did it, which was very nice. She assembled those. Meine Ex-Freundin hat mir die Ketten immer zusammengebaut.
Deswegen ist deine Ex-Freundin. Ja, hast du nur eine Kette bauen.
Wahrscheinlich. So with these tracks, it's very easy. You can paint them separately, and if you paint them, you start with a dark brown color. In this case, this is an actual primer for tracks, which works very well. So that's why I brought it. But you can also apply, another primer and some kind of brown tone. But I think it's a very good way to start off. That's how I painted these tracks. And bitte? Ja. Gerade da hält er sehr gut. Die Ketten? Nicht unbedingt, ne. Aber also wenn du nicht zu viel Verdünnung reintust oder irgendwas, hält es einwandfrei. Natürlich an den Kontaktstellen nicht, aber die willst du ja später eh silbern. So, now we just prime the tracks, and the best way to weather the tracks are different pigments, depending on the area in which your vehicle is operating. If it's Russia, for example, you might want to use something very dark. If it's North Africa, you might want to use something rather brighter than this. And what you do is you just apply them dry in a random manner to the tracks. It's very easy and it's very fast. It's kind of dirty work, so you need to make sure you use some paper or something. And you can also, blend the different pigments together. Every company offers pigments these days. We have pigments from MIG Productions, AK, and we even have the pigments here. The guys next door sell them and gave them to me. These are very nice pigments, like the brown tone and this one. They are from them. But everybody has his own source of pigments. Normally, if you buy a can like this should last your whole modeling life. You don't want to use another one in the next 10 years, because if you do that, using too many pigments, you're just ruining the whole model. Because if you apply too much pigments, the model will lose depth. It's all flat. It will kill all the details, for example. So that's why you have to be very careful. So what you do, you just apply them in a very random manner with an old brush. Pigments is a very good way to ruin your brushes. You can also use some reddish shades if you want. And don't try not to blend the pigments together on the model, because if you do that, you get one color, but we want different colors. So it's important to, you can work around here, but if you blend them too much, you just have one shade, and we want color variation.
Aber jetzt die Pigmente ohne irgendwas, einfach erstmal drauf.
Ja, genau.
Wie lange sollte der Primer gehen? Ist ja auch relativ schnell. Ich kann meine Pinsel sauber, meine Airbrush und mache meine Modelle fertig.
Genau. So you fix them with white spirit or turpentine, any kind will do. Most companies or most modelers use white spirit because it works. Some turpentines are too aggressive and they will just make your model fall apart, basically. You can blend it with white spirit, and when you do so, you just you want to use like a thicker brush, and you don't, you just dab it into the white spirit, and then you kind of just touch the edges of your tracks, and the capillary action will do the rest. Do not work into the surface, because this will just mix the whole color, blend it together. This is not what we want. We just want to fix it. And if you touch the edges with a brush, this will create a nice texture. Just touch the outer edge, and the capillary action will do the rest. It will suck the thinner right in. So, yeah. Thing on a tank, but it's a matter of taste. But so we apply that. If you're at home, you can use a hairdryer to speed up the process. I will use the airbrush, but first, before you start messing around, you want to remove any loose pigments you have at home, because if you use an airbrush now, you know, you have those pigments all over your place. This would be horrible. Do you have a workshop at home, like a special room? Okay. Habt ihr ein Modellbauzimmer? Oh, schön.
Du hast einen Modellbau, Balkon.
So, at home you can use a hairdryer. It will speed up the process. We have only this, but it will work also. The air will make the thinner to evaporate, so it will dry. You see, it's already drying in this area. Again, in the summer this would dry much faster. You know, here it's so we have those different shades of earth tones on it. This will change. It's still kind of wet. So you know, we just apply the earth tones, and the best thing about those Frisch tracks is that it's metal. So when, for example, on this guy, you see that the things here, they're shiny metal because it's a friction between the surface, also Friktionsstellen oder Abriebstellen. So these are metal all the time. So I had to polish them with some sort of metal. In this case, it's much easier. You just take a sander and sand the whole ordeal, and you have, you know, the tracks coming through, and it's a very nice finish. Looks very realistic. You can do it on the guide horns as well, and it just looks like the part. So it's really a big benefit of those tracks. They're a bit more expensive, but you just brush them and you have a very nice effect. You know, and it's always polished. If you look at tracks of tanks in the mud or something, the friction points are always polished because the mud is not able to adhere there. So no matter how dirty your tank is, the friction points will always be polished metal. Also egal was ein Panzer macht, normalerweise die Kontaktstellen müssten immer poliert sein. Und eigentlich auch praktisch dieser Bereich hier innen auch. Also habe ich ein Foto vom Leopard gesehen. Normally the friction points here, this area is supposed to be polished metal as well. This doesn't look very nice, so I usually use pigments in a darker tone or graphite, like a graphite, and just put it on these areas to have the friction points there. But this is basically how it looks in the end. You know. If you're using tracks like the vinyl tracks here, like these are the tracks which came with the kit, the old one. This is the vinyl, the rubber track. So you cannot, you know. So this is just a dry brushing with a metal tone. So it kind of looks like, or the same with the guide horns on the side. They are polished metal as well. So you just paint it on like any other color. Bitte? Nee, habe ich noch nicht gemacht. There's some chemical solutions also to you know, darken them, but I've never tried it. So I like the more classic way to do it with the more classic stuff you have.